Hi there. This week on Typical Books of Terror, I am really thinking of renaming it to Lydia's Books of Terror. Now, both my husband and Michael from Michael's Grim Reads pointed out that my name really works for all of this, and it's my real name. So, why not capitalize on the fact that Lydia Dietz, my not namesake, she's my namesake, is the creepy Books of Terror, bookwormy, goth lady chick type person that would actually work really well. But Typical Books of Terror, something that I'll probably still keep saying, this week on Typical Books, my podcast partner Wes pointed out that he just can't not attach the typical portion to all of this. So yeah, suffice it all to say, I'm still debating. I'll turn now to the bookworms on the Patreon and see what they have to say about the channel name, because I've changed it before, but I've never really put a lot of thought into it. Now that I have decision paralysis. But yes, I don't have decision paralysis when it comes to what to read this month, because I'm participating in Reading in Rumps, the Richard Laymon readathon organized by Regina at Regina's Haunted Library, and of course quite a few other booktubers. So yes, I'll have to go through videos. There's been a few more updates. Kelsey posted an update, Alex posted an update, and I have to go through to see who else and add them to a playlist that I've created to keep track of what everyone's doing for Reading in Rumps. So if you have made a video about Reading in Rumps and I didn't add it to the playlist, let me know in the comments. Yes, and I have added other people to manage the playlist as well, so you can add it yourself if you are one of the playlist managers. Among the Missing was fun. That was what I chose to read for the first week of Reading in Rumps, and the prompt, some people are following it really loosely, and that's totally cool. If you read one Richard Laymon book this month, you're definitely participating. Or if you think hard about Richard Laymon ones this month, then that counts. This was read a Richard Laymon scene where hormones override common sense. Bonus points for someone investigating a noise in their underwear. There's a lot of that going on. Actually, it starts out with a woman driving to have an illicit rendezvous in her nightgown. And then there's a cop chasing people around in just his boxer shorts. And then someone else just kind of rendezvous around with a nightgown. And someone else's dress looks like a nightgown. And people are in their underwear all the friggin' time. And there's someone that's told to strip naked and he's in his underwear. And they're like, them too, bucko. So yeah, there's a lot of underwear, so I picked a really good one. This is really Richard Laymon light. I put a review on typicalbooks.com, more like a preview. I find my reviews aren't reviews, they're more like previews of the book. But my thoughts were that it is very Richard Laymon light. If you want, sort of that, a little bit sexy horror that's not super duper crazy gory and doesn't get pornish with the sex, this is a really good place to start. If you're worried that Richard Laymon would be too much for you, if you find this heavy duty, then Richard Laymon may be too much for you. But if you want just a beachy read that doesn't have a lot of weight as far as horror, is super fun, has great fun, well-developed little characters doing small-town horror things, this is a really good start. We meet the girl in the nightgown that's going to go have an illicit rendezvous, and she ends up dead. The next day, there is this couple, Bass, who I kept wondering if his name is Bass until someone made a trout joke. So Bass and Faye are going to go and hang out and do teenage things and swim or whatever they're going to do at this place, the Bend, and maybe make out or whatever. And they discover the body. Not alone, though. The guy that killed her is just running off into the woods. Wow. So really intense, really troublesome. We get to see a murder. We get to see people see the murder. It's extremely intense. And what was he doing with that body? What was he doing with that head he grabbed and ran into the forest with? We have to find out. So we call in the cops and we get to meet the cops. And then it's a whole small town drama thing. Everyone's horny all the time, like a Richard Laymon novel. But it's fun and it's not as explicit. It's not as gory. It's not as intense as Richard Laymon typically is. And I thought that maybe this would be an earlier thing, but no. This was written in 1999 or somewhere about there and released in 2000, so it's very late in his career, and he certainly wasn't going soft by that point, no pun intended, but he does have like more intense books written around this time. This seemed to be just a break, or maybe it was a trunk book, like the colloquial trunk that authors keep books they've written in that they've not published yet. That could be the case. I don't really know. I do like that he names a street Malfi Street, and Malfi is not a very popular last name or word. Malfeasance, Maleficent, Malfi has like Latin roots, I'm sure, but Ronald Malfi is the Malfi we all know and love, and I'm sure because Ronald Malfi at the time was an up-and-coming leisure horror writer, and Dick Laymon was Dick Laymon, maybe he had Ronald Malfi under his wing. If you are Ronald Malfi, or you are a big Ronald Malfi fan and know everything about him and his career, let me know, because I'd be curious if they were friends, if maybe Richard Laymon mentored him to a certain degree, or if he was just excited about this new up-and-coming author. Very interested as to why there's a street called Malfi Street. Now, Dick Laymon also lived in LA. If there's a Malfi Street in LA of some repute, let me know. So yeah, that was week 1 of the Richard Laymon readathon and I was very happy with Among the Missing, even though I am always looking for something a little more intense from a Richard Laymon book. It only had 2 rumps. There was a rump mentioned at the beginning and a rump at the end, so it's not really fulfilling the rump quota. I have higher hopes for the next book. Not this one, not this book. This is not the book with the rumps, and I don't even think he says the word rump in it once. Robert Bloch's Cold Chills, the author of Psycho. It's taken me a bit to get through this because I was just reading a story here and there, and I actually really like this. If you are a Robert Bloch fan, if you can find this, pick it up, because it's great to have on the shelf. It's great to have for reference, I think. If I wanted to be reading some Ray Bradbury, but wanted something a little darker maybe, this might fit the bill, because I had very much Ray Bradbury vibes reading this. There's a big mix of classic horror, quiet horror, cosmic horror, and science fiction. A lot of science fiction in this book. Not that I didn't expect science fiction from Robert Bloch. I didn't expect as much of it in these 14 stories. There is a story in here that reminds me sort of like of Rick Sanchez of Rick and Morty fame. So yeah, that's kind of some weird slipstream sci-fi going on. The Play's the Thing, though, is probably my favorite story, and it's about an old-timey actor who befriends a theater goer who's very interested in going to see older films, and he notices him there watching for maybe himself. So he thinks he's a very self-centered older actor, that he's watching his old movies for himself, but it turns out he's watching them for his co-star, a girlfriend. But they were both not stars of the show. They were like extras, and they would be in the background of scenes all the time. He had a few breakthrough roles, she did as well, but she died tragically. So it's a kind of a cute love story, but then it gets warped and supernatural and interesting. So yeah, The Play's the Thing is a really great short story if you have a chance to dig that out, if you're interested in Robert Bloch's short stories. It wasn't a really busy reading week for me because I was busy with other things, but I did still read some more No End House. I'm about a third of the way through and really enjoying that book quite a lot. I find the writing style just very good, very lush, very rich, but very simply written. And I think that, going back to Ronald Malfi, he's another writer that can really do this. So I was reading some on these more popular horror authors like Ronald Malfi, Richard Laymon, and the name Christopher Rufty came up. I've never read a Christopher Rufty book. Totally a little tangent here, but if you have, let me know. Is he worth checking out? Is he really the modern reincarnation of Richard Laymon? But No End House, yes. I really like this sort of idea of a man walking across the world. That's what this guy is doing. His wife has a tragic death. He decides, you know what, I'm going to just go for a walk. And he walks somewhere in the US to the South America. And then he hitches a ride to Antarctica. Then he goes from there to, I guess, Africa, and he walks up Africa. So like he's in Barcelona now. A really cool thing. And it's not as awkward as you'd think. I had an uncle that took a bicycle from basically one end of Ontario to the other. It took them a long time. And then when I was cleaning hotel rooms, I met someone who was doing a backpacking journey across Canada, but they had come from the UK and they had come through quite a bit of Europe on this backpacking thing, and then decided on a whim, I'll just hitch a ride over to Canada. Very interesting people that do stunts like this. So I am sold. I don't think it's too wild. The wife's death is pretty wild, and I don't want to spoil it because it is a real gut punch at the beginning of the book, but he keeps going back to it, and it's almost cartoonish. So it doesn't fully pull me out of it, but luckily his writing style saved me and it's keeping me in the book. So I haven't got a lot slated for next week aside from finishing No End House. I think I'm going to pick up that wonderful Edgar Allan Poe book that I picked up at the library sale and start going through some of the stories that maybe I haven't read as closely or haven't read for a long time or haven't read at all, which there's only very few. But I do have my pick for Reading and Rumps Week 2, Endless Night. I've been very excited to get to this. This is a Richard Laymon that I don't remember if I read or not. I was positive I had not read Among the Missing, and it turns out I was right. I don't know if I've read Endless Night. I really don't, because sometimes Richard Laymon plots sort of blur together when you read 10 of them back to back. Jodie is pretty tough for a 16-year-old girl, and that's the only reason she's still alive. For now. She was sleeping over at her friend Evelyn's house when a group of killers broke in and tried to slaughter everyone. She saw Evelyn spitted on a spear, but Jodie managed to escape, along with Evelyn's little brother Andy. I have some teasers from other people's readings of this book, and just even there, I'm like, I know how weird this is going to get already. Wow, okay. Simon was one of the killers that gruesome night. His friends have left it up to him to find the only living witness to their massacre, or else they'll butcher his family next. But Simon has his own reasons for wanting to get his hands on Jodie. I think I'm going to start scoring myself. If a book says if you've missed Laymon, you've missed a treat. If I find a Richard Laymon book that doesn't say that, I just lose all my points, and I get a point every time I read one. So now I have like 7,000 trillion million points. Yeah. If you've missed Laymon, you've missed a treat. This is supposed to be the book that he wanted to write with the pedal to the metal from the beginning. He wanted to start at the climax and just keep going up from there. And I'm excited because, like Among the Missing, like I said, it was a very chill, kind of beachy read, good entry-level Laymon. I think that this is next level Laymon. I think that this is endgame, final form Laymon. I have really high hopes for this book. And sure, they may be dashed quite simply, but I am pretty forgiving too when it comes to Richard Laymon, so I'm very excited to get to this. The prompt for week 2, and I don't know if this will fit. The basement is always a bad idea. I figured if someone was doing a home invasion, in the movies, people run to the basement or upstairs, or I don't know why they run upstairs, but they do. But sometimes they run in the basement, which is also a pretty bad idea. But maybe they run into the basement. Find a scene where a character enters a creepy space they absolutely should have avoided. Why are they like this? That's Regina talking in the prompts. Why do people do that? Why do people in movies, someone's breaking in, I'm going to run to the second floor where I'm completely trapped, where I have to jump out of a window or scale onto the roof. Sure, it works for an action sequence, but in real life, it doesn't work. Why are they like this? Oh, someone's breaking in, I'm going to go into the basement. Like, oh, okay. There's many Richard Laymon books where people are like, oh, something really creepy is happening over there and I'm in my underwear. Let's go check it out. And yeah, why are they like this? That's a great question. So yeah, maybe we'll figure it out. In Endless Night, I'm sure there's a creepy space where they're supposed to be weirded out, but they venture forth anyway. And for mergers and acquisitions, I didn't do a lot of shopping. I did quite a bit of book shopping at the library sale last week, but Super Strange Shadow, a viewer here on the channel, and I were talking a little bit in the comments about Thomas Harris books. And it dawned on me, my mother had read them all. We had them all in the house, but she passed before he could release his most recent book, which is not a Hannibal Lecter book. Carrie Mora, and author of Silence of the Lambs, Thomas Harris, it seems to be a little more of an espionage and intrigue story. Half a ton of a dead man's gold lays hidden beneath a mansion on the Miami Beach waterfront. Ruthless men have tracked it for years. Leading the pack is Hans-Peter Schneider. Driven by unspeakable appetites, he makes a living fleshing out the violent fantasies of other, more richer men. Carrie Mora, caretaker of the house, has escaped from the violence in her native country, and she stays in Miami on a wobbly temporary protected status. Subject to the iron whim of ICE, she works at many jobs to survive. Beautiful, marked by a war, Carrie catches the eye of Hans-Peter as he closes in on her treasure. But Carrie Mora has more surprising skills, and her will to survive has been tested before. Monsters lurk in the crevices between male desire and female survival. No other writer in the last century has conjured these more than Thomas Harris, or whatever. But I thought that the mention of ICE agents being after this woman who's guarding a treasure to a certain degree was a really fitting, timely idea. So I thought I would check it out. It's kind of short. I think it's a lot shorter than it looks because the print is really large. So yeah, it was also on sale for $12 on Amazon. So if you're interested, this is pretty cheap right now. So that is all of the books that I am reading this week. And for the next, maybe something else will get added from the backwards bookshelf. There's only 19 books left on there right now. So I have to go through my shelves to find things that I've bought recently, like Carrie Mora, and stick them on the backwards shelf as well, because I've got a few placeholder books you can see at the end that aren't backwards. And I haven't read every book on my shelf. There's more than 19, so I have to add what I've bought recently to the end of that. If you have read Among the Missing, or of course Endless Night, let me know in the comments below. I'm very interested. Or Thomas Harris's Carrie Mora. Very interested to hear about that. Carrie Mora looks very small, so I believe that will be one and done, as they say, next week. Thank you very much for watching, and have an spooky day.